Good afternoon, and welcome to our monthly table talk. This month, we're talking about the comparison spiral. So, should be. We've really enjoyed creating this topic. This is definitely one to feel into. So, hopefully lots of people will tune into this recording and go through the worksheet because I think there's a great value. So welcome Shirley, welcome Nicole. Thanks for being here with us live today. And the reason why we do these table talks is because we really see the value of community, right? We believe that change in the world is absolutely possible, and made even more possible when done in the strength of a community and that collective energy and intention. So we really appreciate you being with us today. And so obviously owning that there's a little bit of putting each of you on the spot because it's the two of you here with us now, but I'm curious if there's anything in particular that resonated for you with this topic, or what made you click, yes, going to that. Love to know if you're willing to share.
Well, I can't always be part of them, but I always watch the table talks when I get the recordings. So whenever I'm available, I just take them all.
Beautiful.
Any information is always wanted.
Lovely. Thanks for sharing that, Nicole.
And for me, it's very much like Nicole. Anything that I can learn is awesome. And pretty well every table talk you've had has been directed at me. I always go away feeling like, wow, start the car. What a deal.
You got the goods.
I got the goods.
Awesome. Well, that's great. We're super pleased to have you with us. And of course, we love hearing that you're getting value from them. That's what we're here doing, right?
And I spiral a lot. Start off with an intention and then I spiral. So yeah.
Great awareness, Shirley.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. As Leslie said, I just want to say this is a topic that I continue to be fascinated by, even though knowing about it, and we're going to dig and do a deep dive into comparisons. I think it's such an insidious pattern, way of thinking, that I just really appreciate any kind of reminders or whatnot. And so we wanted to start with really, how it all works from the sort of ground up. And the beginning of this whole pattern is really a totally normal, important, healthy developmental stage where we can understand and appreciate contrast. So contrast is the
Lynn's just leaving us hanging in suspense.
Contrast is Lynn is frozen.
Hot and the cold. You're teaching your little one the stove is hot. Go.
Lynn,
say again, Leslie, what have I left in suspense? Oh.
you froze. You said contrast is, and then you completely froze. So you have to start back at what contrast is, please.
Okay, thank you. It didn't flag up. It didn't show up on my screen, so my apologies. Rewind back to contrast is a normal developmental stage of learning. So little ones, we teach them the difference between hot and cold. And we start to recognize day and night, sweet and sour, all of those kinds of things. It's a critical stage that we can really appreciate contrast. And so one of my questions to you is, if contrast is a natural, healthy kind of thing, and that we can have that as a really good foundation, when you think about contrast, what contrast do you really appreciate? What do you notice when you think about that?
I appreciate my warm bed over getting up in the morning and it's cold in the house.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, exactly. Sarah, I saw you come off here.
I was going to say that I very much appreciate a sunny day after a streak of rainy days.
Yes.
But when you have All sunny days, you don't notice it as much because when I'm in Aruba, I don't notice it. Sunny day every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really love the contrast of seasons, sort of along the same line, Sarah. My mom would go to Arizona, and I found it actually quite boring. Like, it just, there wasn't the change that I really savor of fall or spring or, yeah. Any other contrasts that anybody wants to mention that you savor?
I
Sure.
savor when I have my grandchildren around and there's challenging behavior and welcoming behavior.
Uh-huh.
I savor that. I learn from the challenging, but I savor the other.
Beautiful. Well, Shirley and I have also talked about how we savor the silence after we've had a lot of noise and interaction and chaos, and then we have our house to ourselves, and it's like, oh, savoring. Yeah,
Well, I love how you're pointing out that without contrast, we don't get an experience.
that's
We
it.
need both sides for an experience to happen.
That's right. And so then we go a little deeper. Truly, without loss, we can't savor the beauty, whether it's of life or health or nature or whatever. We need those contrasts. So we're now going to look at how we sequence it from going just from natural contrast. What's the sequence we go to where we end up in comparisons?
Let me take a look at that. So first, we could look at contrast showing up in kind of like the facts, what's real, what's measurable, what my five senses can pick up. This is the very beginning of contrast. And then we take a next step into personal preferences. So my feelings based on past experiences, i.e. what I like or don't like.
Like your warm bed.
Like my warm bed, that's right. And then now that it evolves into a judgment, this is where fear starts to come in, or our beliefs start to come in. So now it's not just, I like it, it's good or bad, or it's right or wrong. You can see it's building up. And then as we get to comparison, now we get to this place where my judgment has a meaning that I apply to myself or others. So now we've gone from good or bad, right or wrong to worth or value. And this creates a better than, less than, superior, inferior. And so that's how we go from something so natural and beautiful as contrast all the way up to competition, comparison, separation from each other. And so I want to go a little further. We get to the inner critic now. The inner critic is fueled by fear, and it creates that inferior and superior kind of thinking. And as we evolve into that, the critic now starts saying, well, now I need more of this, or I have to do more of that. And all of that, again, is based on fear that if I don't, then I won't belong, or that I'm going to lose out on something. And so that fear can really start driving our system and seem very real. Everyone has heard the acronym false evidence appearing real. Fits very well right here. And so, and then we get into the level of me and you, us and them. So now we start to compare, how am I doing in relation to them? And at this point now, our self-esteem gets conditional. Our self-esteem gets put on the line. Now we go into guilting and shaming and wronging, overriding our heart.
Mm-hmm.
And then, again, we're now assessing people's worth. We've moved from a behavior they do to that's good, bad, wrong, i.e. they're not good enough or they're superior. And then next we get into overachieving or underachieving or underperforming, I guess you could say. And these naturally come out of the comparisons. Both of them are built on comparisons. The overachiever is pushing because they fear losing status. They fear doing it wrong, making a mistake. They fear having an image that looks bad. They fear being less than. And the underperformer is actually afraid of the expectations, and they're afraid of not belonging, and they're very afraid of disappointing, or failing.
Mhm.
And all of that is built on that competition comparison model. So as I'm sharing this, do you have something you want to say, Lynn?
Yeah, I think that's just so beautiful to see the destructiveness as we go in and how we can pressure ourselves and push, or do the opposite, retreat because of fear. I don't want to compete. I don't want to be less than. So,
I think when we're at either one of those places of underperforming or overachieving, we're so deep into it, we've lost all these kind of layers that we're mapping out today. So we can pull back and understand it more. I'm wondering
Well,
how
and
this is. Oh, go ahead,
I
Lynn.
just want to add, while you're just named it the way that you did and spoke into it, both of you, what was coming up for me is it's really relates directly to inner balance when we talk about the pattern of withdrawal versus taking charge, right? So that overachiever is coping with the fear through taking charge, right? Pushing, whereas that underperformer is withdrawing, right? Afraid of taking steps and what that might lead to. So it's a really great lens of noticing that both are just a way of coping with what's coming up when we start to compare versus contrast.
I like that, Leslie. You're saying it's like the overachiever feels more safe when they're controlling, and the underperformer feels more safe when they're holding back. So that, yeah, you're right. That fits very well. Very well.
Yeah.
I'd like to open it to the group. How is all of this landing for you? Talking about the difference between contrast, building all the way up to comparison or competition. What's coming up for you as we talk about all of this? Any insights?
Someplace my mind always goes to is just, becoming more aware of this. It's pretty obvious that we just judge all the time, constantly. I mean, watch a TV show and it would like a reality TV show with people on it and really tune into your own thoughts. It's incredible how much comes up. We don't have to accept it, especially once we become aware of it. But it has blown my mind how constantly, like I used to say, oh, I don't judge people. Well, I might not act on it, but those thoughts still roll through my head, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, no, I think that's a great point, Sarah, because judgment, there is no escaping judging.
No.
It is a natural thing that our mind does, our system does to protect ourselves, right? That judgment is assessment for safety at the lowest level. If we were to talk about it like contrast is just noticing light from dark, judgment is noticing safe, unsafe at its most basic level, right? And yet it's when that ego or that inner critic starts to add its flavor that we start to go to those more negative places. And I noticed when looking at the sequence on the screen, did anybody else feel like that tension that builds with each step that we take? It's like we start at this level of, contrast, and it starts to like the pressure builds, doesn't it? Really felt that as you were listing through them, Jeff.
Yeah, I get that too. There's a lot more weight by the end. Now it's onto my worth or my value or their worth, their value. It's just the contrast, which if kept clean is quite neutral.
Yeah, and I mean, I felt it, Leslie, literally viscerally when we were talking about, you in your warm bed. I went to that yummy feeling, and then, the seasons or the sun after the rain and this and that. It felt very freeing, like to say, oh, I noticed this and I'm appreciating that, or sweet and salty, and all of those are delicious. And yet we abandon that level of doing life from that appreciating contrast if we're not on solid ground on the inside. So my comment was, it's interesting when I'm lean more towards comparison and when I'm a little better at just savoring and enjoying, it's going to reflect how I'm feeling on the inside, like we focused with the inner balance.
Well, I was thinking too, also Leslie, that your share of the weight, why is it getting heavier? For me, it's because I'm actually moving more and more into insecurity and shame as I go down, right? From contrast, it's not about me. There's no insecurity. There's no guilt or
Yeah.
shame. By the time I'm at value and worth and assessing someone else's or my own, that's all underpinned by insecurity and some sort of guilt or shame.
Mhm.
That's a very heavy energy.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Would anyone
Anything
else like to share before we move on?
We did a difficult hike on Monday, and I can do it, and I'm slower than almost everybody. And I found myself starting to, but why can't I be as fast as everyone else? But I managed to pull that back and just talk myself through one step, one step, one step, and I got there too. So, but I could feel myself going, but I want to go fast like they can, and I can't. My
Yeah.
legs are shorter.
Right.
Kristen, that is such a fabulous example because I want you to think about what would have been different in your experience. How would it have felt to push yourself to keep up with everyone else? What would you have walked away with? Probably some injured muscles, or possibly,
You
and
had that
and
anyway.
Yeah.
right? But when we push ourselves to keep up or perform, so to speak, right? Chances are we finish that experience feeling almost beat down a little bit, right? Versus when we honor ourselves, when you were able to like pull that back into that self-honoring and go at a pace that felt right for you, I imagine you might have been challenged, but also had a somewhat pleasant experience in that challenge. That challenge
Yeah.
becomes rewarding.
Mm.
Yeah. I made up a song to myself that, one step is closer to the end, one more step is closer to the end, and I can do it too. And I made it. It was 24 kilometers, so it was really hard.
Well done.
One thing I'd like to add to that, Kristen, too, is you were saying, I'd like to be going faster. Everybody else is going faster than me. All the people that you would be blasting past probably didn't have the courage to go out there and do it.
Maybe.
Yeah, definitely.
Great point. Beautiful piece to highlight, Sarah. Yeah. So let's feel into another example of this then. So again, we'll just play with some imaginary characters. So I'd like you to meet Claire. Okay. Claire, she's the regional manager of a mid-sized tech firm. Okay. So she is known for being an extremely sharp and driven woman, very motivated, super on top of things at work. Okay. I bet you're already developing a bit of a picture, maybe comparing to someone in your own life or contrasting, right? So her calendar is color coded down to the minute. Her inbox is pretty much always resting at 0, and she hasn't missed a deadline in 10 years. Okay. Now, you could say that she thrives on performance, at least on the surface. Okay. Then there's Jason. So Jason is on her team. He's creative. He's super thoughtful, and he's also got a slower pace. Okay, his timelines have a tendency to stretch out. His updates are a little on the vague side of things, generally speaking. His spreadsheets are fine, but they're not tight. Okay, and to Claire, this is starting to feel like a bit of a personal threat. Why? Well, because her ego has started to take her into this comparison place as opposed to simply contrast. So during Jason's review, she's not just offering him feedback, she's really pushing him. Her tone gets sharp. Her expectations sound a lot more like ultimatums than anything else. And she's saying things like, you're going to have to step up. I need you to show more ownership. Everyone else is moving faster than you. Okay. So as you're sort of feeling into that example, I'm wondering if you can notice, what does Claire wish were different about Jason? What would be the things she would change in him?
Faster. Make them faster.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she wants him to be faster, more driven, right?
He wants him. She wants him to be like her.
Exactly, Kristen. Right? She just wants another her, doesn't she? Yeah. So now let's play out a little bit. What might be some judgments that she's making about Jason? What are some of her background thoughts?
Remember, judgment is like good, bad, right, wrong.
Yeah.
So if he can't be as fast as her, then the project's not going to be done as well as she would do it.
Right. If it's not done like at her pace, it's not going to be as good. Great point, Kirsten, for sure. What are some other judgments she might be making? Ooh, and I should probably give away a little bit of a secret here. The questions I'm asking you happen to be very tightly related to the questions on the skill building page that you'll be able to roll through. So the exercise here, we really want to look for those judgments, right? This is where we're going to start to dig into the more reflective places. So what else might she be judging Jason with?
She might be believing he's not putting enough effort in.
Yeah, great point, Shirley. Absolutely.
Not pushing himself enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe even sloppy, just because with his vague updates and things.
Yeah. And notice, and I think Kirsten, you kind of touched on this, right? Like ultimately, again, we've got this really strong judgment that her way is the way, right? Any other judgments that you can pick up on here?
I'm thinking she's devaluing creativity. Like something is trumping it, like deadlines or tight stats or something in that performance over creativity.
Yeah. In other words, creativity isn't performance.
Yeah, almost.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. So if these are the judgments that Claire has rolling around in the back of her mind, what does that mean for her? Right? So we've gone to that first layer beyond contrast, right? Of good, bad, those are her judgments. And now she's going to add meaning to it. So if she's judging creativity as less productive, her way as the only way, his pace is wrong, it's slow, it's damaging, it's not going to get the results, what does that mean for her?
Maybe that her team is going to perform, so then she's not going to get a good review because the overall project isn't done the way she thinks it should be.
Absolutely. It's going to reflect on her. You're right. Yeah. What else? What else is she making that mean about him, her?
Potentially that she's better than him.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely some hierarchy now, right? Yeah. What else?
Would she also be feeling that she's going to lose control of the situation?
Great point, Shirley. Ooh, and then what might happen then? What happens when we are afraid we're losing control? We white knuckle it. We dig in even deeper, right? We burrow ourselves right into our position, right? And notice if she's got this like hierarchy, right? There's now this win-lose competitive aspect, right? Now they're not teammates. It's me against him almost, right? We start to see that there's more of a combative approach versus collaborative, right? So it's like she's making it mean that they're on opposite sides.
Well, and then I was thinking of the leadership aspect. When you said the hierarchy, she could feel like it's directly reflecting her leadership.
Yeah. His underperformance is a reflection of me underperforming. Right? So if these are the judgments, I want you to think about what are ways that those are untrue, right? What are some maybe facts, right? What are some ways that those judgments are untrue?
In the example I had given where she may feel better than him, the fact is she's just simply more organized, does things a little bit faster. That's a fact, does things a little faster.
Yeah. And you know, one thing we haven't heard is what are the end results, right? The example doesn't actually touch on either of their end results. Maybe they both ultimately have great results.
I think sometimes slower is better. You know, lots of times I've had a quick answer and then I've had time to reflect on it. And then I've gone, I don't think that that was quite it. Or I don't even think what I said is true. So slower can be more thoughtful.
Yeah, he might be more thorough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank
And being
you.
creative, he might have a different pathway to get to where he needs to be.
Absolutely.
I think where Sarah else and Lynn were pointing as well is like we need different strengths in the team. Same thing you're pointing to now, Michael. Like that's what makes a great team.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a super strong team is a combination of different methods, approaches, viewpoints, right? I think there's greater strength in that. If we all agreed with each other every time, we wouldn't get very interesting results, would we? But how many of you have had that experience when there's actually some tension or disagreement or different options or offerings that the results are actually so much superior, right? Ooh, listen to me comparing, right? But there becomes a richer end result because we've had different thought, different approach, different opportunities explored, right? There's great value in that. So now, if we kind of circle back to that first question, right? What did Claire want Jason? How did she want him to be different? Okay, so that's what we were saying, that she wishes he was faster, more driven, more organized, basically a higher performer, right? So what might be some of the benefits of Jason's approach? Right? We've talked about in the team, but is there anything else we would want to add about Jason's approach? What might be beneficial about it?
Creativity thinks outside the box and you can come up with better solutions because you're not just going straight at an answer.
Absolutely, Kirsten.
I think Michael also, your answer just a moment ago fits here again. He's more
Mhm.
thorough. He's going to likely miss less things, you know, like because he's not going so fast. That's a big benefit.
Yeah, high quality can take time, can't it? And Shirley, were you going to add something?
Yeah, is this team just Claire and Jason, or are there others on the team?
Good
Assume there's
question.
others.
I assume
If
there's
there
others.
are, he would be more approachable, so to work in the team environment.
Yeah, he might be calmer, mellower, easier to get along with, easier to stay engaged with potentially. Or
These are absolutely fantastic points, right? I mean, how many of you might shy away a little bit from the Claire type of personality and feel a little more willing to go approach a Jason? Right? It's definitely true for me.
And a lot more distracted in judging Claire.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be on point either.
Great point, Shirley. Yeah, and at the end of the day, if Jason's approach is different than Claire's, if he's given the permission, the leeway to do things in a way that feels good for him, he's going to be happier. And the studies have shown happy people are productive people, right? Whereas if he was trying to jam himself into Claire's box, he might be miserable and therefore actually way less productive. Yeah. So then if we look at these sort of perspectives around taking the time and the thoroughness and being approachable, if we can really kind of step into those and go a little bit deeper than just, the obvious options, what might be some even more compassionate approaches that we could bring to those thoughts or bring to Jason and his way of doing?
Kind of if we were putting ourselves in Claire's shoes, if she could actually have been with us, seeing the benefits of Jason, how might she be able to approach it a little differently? Yeah.
Excellent. I think in some ways we've kind of touched on a couple of them. The first one that comes to mind is again, just that piece of balance, right? So if I'm Claire and I'm able to step in this place of saying, Jason really brings a balance to our team, brings in that different perspective, right? As soon, even just imagining that I'm Claire, which I'm probably more, well, actually, no, I'm probably a bit of both. Don't answer that question, Lynn and Jeff. If I put myself in her shoes and I think that way, I can feel this kind of softening happening. So what might be some other thoughts or perspectives that Claire could bring that might help her soften a little around this comparison she's playing out?
I'm even seeing it in a way as Leslie going from the benefits, and then how do we like acknowledge and celebrate those? Like there's another way we could be doing this. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of the learning. Like if Claire actually, I'm making this up, but maybe she doesn't feel that creative. That's not her strong suit. Many people with this profile might say, oh, I'm not artistic, I'm not creative. There's a beautiful opportunity for her to learn and feel kind of how Jason is creative. And so she could offer something like saying, you've got a strength that I don't. And I notice it shows up in this creative aspect. And that's something I want to learn more about. But you'd have to let go of deadlines in quite such a rigid way. I will admit that.
Yeah. And I want to highlight that again, kind of turning to the skill building page or the worksheet that will come along with this. These questions are aimed at supporting us to go more deeply into ourselves, go beyond those surface or immediate thoughts that are trapping us in comparison, right? So that we can tune in a little more deeply to the situation and soften some of that, right?
And we're moving ourselves out of that heavy energy of right, wrong, superior, inferior. These questions are bringing us to the contrast level of like, this is the benefit, whether good or bad or right or wrong is not the point. These are benefits. And they're all in this situation, they all create a powerful team. All of it's necessary and different.
Yeah. Sorry. It's really creating more of that neutrality, isn't it? Yeah. So then if Claire were to work herself into this position of like, okay, I see the value in different approaches, and gosh, there might even be some learning opportunity for me. And I can see that, Jason's the guy who's probably going to catch my mistakes from moving too quickly because of his thoroughness and methodical approach. So if she were able to shift into that space, just imagine on a scale of 0 to 5, 0 being closed, 5 being wide open like a Care Bear stare, how open do you think Claire's heart might be towards Jason now with this shift in her perspective?
5.
3, 4, yeah. 4.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely a lot more open than where she started. Right? Remember, just to track back, we started with this energy of slow is bad, it's damaging, he's not productive. Now it's reflecting bad on me. I'm a bad leader. We're never going to get things done. And now we've softened to this place of seeing the value that this different approach brings to the team. We're feeling collaborative instead of combative, right? A big shift, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So so let's just imagine that she came to this table talk after having given Jason that review. What might be some action that she could take now with this new perspective and new awareness in terms of perhaps building or repairing that relationship with Jason? What might she say or do?
You know, I was taking a spin off Michael's comment. I was thinking she might start to reevaluate how she's viewed quality, like, you know, a job really well done, and open it up to some other variables, like, sure, deadlines are one way and whatnot, but maybe there's a broader, you know, way of evaluating a job well done. Like when we think, oh, did I do it the fastest? Did I do it the most thorough? Did I do it in a way that people enjoyed being part of her team? Like she might open up and start to ask poor Jason, but get Jason's input on what a quality outcome would look like to him. Might be different than how she would code it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other thoughts on what she might do to build or rebuild or repair that relationship with this new awareness?
Well, I would think that if she can approach Jason with some understanding, um, appreciation for his methods, that he may show up stronger and feel more part of the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of along both the lines of what you're sharing, Shirley, and what Lynn had shared, you know, she might even want to out herself a little bit, right? Show up really vulnerably and honestly and say, you know what, I'm noticing we have a different way of being. And my tendency is to do this. My tendency is to push and produce and be fast. And I'm starting to notice there may be some flaws there, right? And think of how that impacts the team dynamic now, right? Especially when we named, you know, that none of us would be really excited to approach a Claire. Jason was a little more approachable, but now if Claire's showing up with this honesty and vulnerability, I personally might be a little bit more willing to approach her.
I think it would also be easier for her to maybe light a fire under his bum and get him working a bit faster if she appreciated the positive things that he did too.
Mm-hmm.
She can learn from him, he can learn from her, because probably there are some things he's doing that he could do better. Or she wouldn't have any of those complaints, but no, there's maybe a balance between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Great point. Absolutely. Right.
Yeah, I agree with you, Michael. If people feel seen and heard, and the other person's being accountable and speaking up with truth, then we move away from competition, comparison, and we move to collaboration. It's a great point.
Well, and look at that now. Now you've, Michael, you just like beautifully taken us to the point of how comparison versus contrast impacts relationship.
Yeah.
Right? When I've got that energy in relationship, how does that feel on the receiving end? It feels awful to me. I can't stand it. Because even if someone does it, they don't have to say a word, do they? And we can feel that comparison playing out because again, it is noticeable. It's heavy energy. And when someone's sort of softening, seeing that value, and we're comparing and contrasting versus just judging, right? Now that's relationship building territory. This is where we can become an even stronger team and an even stronger individual within that team. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
That's where I was going in my thinking, not because Kirsten and Michael are together as a couple, but I was already thinking couples and raising children. And so many people that I saw when I was doing couples work and so on, it was good guy and bad guy. It was the right way and the wrong way. It was all of that energy. He should be more accountable with the kids and discipline, and she should lighten up and be more fun and playful, or whatever dynamic. But both were discounting the strengths rather than celebrating them, celebrating the differences.
Absolutely. I love that. Great point, Lynn.
There's a book, if any of you are interested in, the Courage to Be Disliked. On the worksheet, when you print it out, you'll see a little quote on the bottom there, which I love, fits well here. We are different but equal. And it's pointing to that, of course, we're all different. I mean, a child's different than an adult, for example. And as humans, we're equal. So I wouldn't give the same responsibility to a 4-year-old that we'd give to a 50-year-old, for example. There's differences. But there's a level where we're all equal. And that's what this is pointing to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
So let's open it up, shall we, for what's resonating for you as we dive into this, and what situations come to your mind? Because I think there's situations where I do certainly a much better job of being in that kind of neutral place and whatnot, and in situations where I don't, where comparison really hurts. Either I hurt myself because I compare to what I wish I was, or I'm downgrading or dismissing others. What situations do you notice comparison showing up for you?
The first thing that pops into my mind, Lynn, is an area where I find comparisons show up is when I go to the gym and there's these guys can lift such huge weight, and I'm lifting small weight, trying to just like build my muscle and my tendons. These other people are actually bodybuilding, and so when they leave a machine and I go on it, I'm like, I'm taking the weight all the way down to a much higher spot, which is less weight, and they've got it way down, the pins way down in the stack, and I can see my ego going, I should be doing better, sort of thing. So
Ditto for me.
yeah.
And I look at the person who was there before. In my case, if it was a woman, and I'm doing the comparison thing.
Yeah.
Along that same vein, I know that one of my very closest friend is like a toothpick, and she eats horribly. She drinks. I mean, she does all the things, and I work out and do this and that, and like she's just still a stick. So there's definitely some comparison. Like, well, why can't my body do that? I do so much for my body, and I still don't look that good. Yep.
Good share.
Yeah, there's situations that you notice, I go to comparison really quickly.
Also, when I listen to people speak, somebody that's a really great speaker, I compare myself. Oh, I couldn't do it like that good. Always.
Yeah. So that whole category of skills, when there's something that we wish like public speaking or whatever it is, if we want it, we might slide into those comparisons.
And in all of those examples that you were all just bringing up, it was just bringing me back to part of what we talked about with the Claire and Jason scenario, where when we slip into comparison, we actually lose that opportunity to learn, right? There may be things we can learn from those folks who are capable of lifting so much more, or staying in better shape, or parenting differently, or more successful, and not in the sense of wronging myself, but being open to possibility, right? But as soon as I find my mind slip into that comparison place, I've shut down that piece. I'm not asking questions, I'm making statements, right? And there's no room in a statement for insight.
So true. I think also, Leslie, when we're in the comparison space, we've lost the ability to appreciate. we've lost just to say like, well, that's great, they've developed that strength, or they have that skill set, or we can see that without adding a comparison about my value or their value. Just, wow, what a great skill set. What an amazing speaker. I can be very appreciative or celebrate that in some way. But once I go to comparison, I make that person better than me, or vice versa. Appreciation, celebration goes out the window.
Yeah.
I have an example too where I need to walk. I don't particularly like to walk unless I've got somebody I'm having a great talk with. I met up with a girlfriend and she has made it her priority to walk and eat clean. And she looks amazing. I haven't got on the train yet. And I found myself comparing, and then I found myself going to the prickly porcupine. Don't tell me what to do. We met for a visit. Why don't we just have something to eat? Why are you so focused on what we eat that's got to be so clean? So I found that it took away from my part of the visit because I sat in judgment of just have a coffee with milk and sugar. Like, why are you so strict with yourself? And yet I'm sitting back comparing myself to her because we're same age group, and I'm thinking, she looks amazing. So what she's doing is really good. I could learn from her, but I get really prickly and I don't want her to teach me or tell me.
Yeah.
To me, it damages the relationship, but it also takes away the joy of the visit.
Mm-hmm.
Great awareness. That's so true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I realized too that my past experience is different than people I keep comparing, especially when it comes to walking. I've got my reasons for where I'm at, but I often shut the doors when I, don't want to, when I compare, and then I don't do it.
Well, a while ago, we did a table talk on taking it personal. You can see how comparison is completely built on making a situation, a skill set, something all of a sudden personal, negative against me or something like that. And then it makes sense that we want to protect ourselves now because we're now feeling insecure in some way. And then naturally we want to shield ourselves. So it makes a lot of sense, Shirley.
We use the opportunity to learn and grow.
Yeah.
And I love that you use that prickly porcupine metaphor because it highlighted what you just said, Jeff. But in terms of like, you can see the protection playing out there. When I stay in that neutral contrast level where I'm just sort of noticing what is without the judgment and then the meaning, right? I don't need to protect myself. So I don't have to strap on the armor or the prickles, right?
Well, and what I was going to say, Shirley, is, and I can do exactly the process you described all by myself. I can compare inside my head and judge myself. So now I've got like the two parts of me arguing about my fitness and judging and back and forth. I don't even need another person to compare myself with. So that's that internalized inner critic that we talk about, right? The part of me that is critical to my, and then I got the rebellious part that says, no way, like get out of here, get off my back, etc. So now I just want to go to the couch and watch Netflix or whatever. The same dynamic all inside me. Really, really, that's why I was so fascinated with this topic, because it's really destructive. It's really, I heard a phrase and I adopted it, that comparisons are violent. They're an act of violence of putting myself down or putting someone else down. And stating it as the extreme of violence really got me sitting up and paying attention and thinking, this is not a good habit. This is not a good pattern. I want to start lessening it, really pulling back to that, well, where we started, like, what can I appreciate here? And not going into the fantasy, but just genuinely in this moment, what can I appreciate? Bringing it back to neutral, like we do, as you said, Leslie, in the inner balance, shifting that thinking.
What's coming up for me is my family loves to play lots of games, board games, card games, all that sort of stuff. And since I've been getting into personal development, observing myself more, and I've really noticed where the competition piece comes into card games or board games or anything like that, and observing myself to see, like, of course the goal is to win, but it's not against the other person. Like if I win, they're lesser, it's just learn strategies, have skills, and then there's a healthy competition, I guess you could say, but it's about the strategies and skills towards something in the game. It's not about the actual competition with the other person or comparison to the other person, which I think is what happens very unconsciously quickly. We've been trained since we're little to be competing with each other, and one person did better, so they get gold and you will get bronze, or you get a participation ribbon. Like all these things just hurt our self-worth and our fragile self-esteem. And so it's a big thing to untie and notice. But what I found for me in those board games is I didn't realize how much it was running. I kept slowing down and noticing time and time again, like, oh yeah, I am really making this personal. It isn't personal.
Beautiful. Wonderful. So, what are you taking away from this conversation? What are you noticing? What are you excited to look at in your own life or to bring back to your own practices? What's landing for you?
For me, I realize, even though I thought I'd come a long way about not taking things personal, I still do it. I still do it very often. And I don't always admit it. I think I'm past it, but I realize I'm not. So that's pretty cool.
Thanks for sharing, Shirley. Yeah.
I think that one is a lifetime journey, in my opinion, at least. At 74, I'm still working on it. So I figure it's probably going to be with me to the end of my days of really learning more and more to not take it personally and think I'm being evaluated or whatever.
Yeah, and even being aware of when I'm doing it. Because then even if I don't act on it, at least I can slow myself down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think pulling back to that piece from earlier, that we're all different. I mean, it's kind of the diversity that creates such a wonderful world, but it doesn't make one person or one thing lesser than another. And we have a lot of wounding and conditioning around our self-esteem, and so ever being insecure. So I definitely get the taking it personal pattern comes up for me a lot too. It's good awareness, really.
I think for me, it would be more, not so much the comparing, but the allowing myself to try stuff before the comparing. Like, sometimes you'll say, well, I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to be able to do that. I don't want to take the risk. And I think it's just maybe taking the little risks and moving ahead, and then with the little achievements, then you go up. But it's just hard to take the first step.
Yeah.
Well, Nicole, I relate strongly with that. I would fall under the category of the underperformer because I'm afraid to fail. And so that is one of the things that stops me, gets in my way. I don't want to disappoint. I don't want to fail. And there's a big advantage to that, because then I really get methodical about what I'm going to do and get really solid before I step up and do it. Where I watch other people who don't have that may just run carelessly into the thing and pitch the whole idea, and there's holes in it everywhere. So there's benefits to everything we do. I appreciate your share. It resonates with me.
Thank you.
And I have to say that even obviously we talked a lot about this topic, but even as we're going through it here today with all of you, it's really landing even more deeply for me, this idea that just noticing it's when the judgment comes, right? Good, bad, right, wrong, and then I attach meaning. right? Everything before that is healthy and supportive, right? And like Nicole, you're saying it can be motivating even, right? It's watching for that judgment and that meaning coming in, because gosh, those slip in quickly without me noticing. Right.
Baked in the cake.
Well, then I really like Kirsten's offering, which is back the bus up a little. It's one step at a time. Okay, I said yes, and I showed up, and now I'm learning a little. And if we can give ourselves that permission to do one step at a time, which is really all we can do, you know, I was thinking, Leslie, of you and your body work and the people that hurt themselves in the gym because they've decided, you know, they're going to go to this level or that level or whatever. Injuries are just so common. And I'm actually of the age now, I don't want to injure myself at all. So I've got that as a much higher priority. If I have to go slower on the weights or the whatevers, I'm going slower so that I don't hurt my body. I'm willing to have some pain, stiffness, like when I've used the muscles, but not injury. So yeah, I like that one step.
And I think when we're in that place of a contrast, we're more likely feeling into something, right? So I think this fitness analogy works really beautifully, right? So if I'm lifting weights and I'm contrasting, when I lift 5 pounds, it feels like this, maybe really easy. When I lift 20 pounds, it actually feels uncomfortable. My joint doesn't feel good. But when I lift 10, it's challenging, more so than 5, but it feels okay, right? When I'm just doing the contrast without the judgment and the meaning, I'm able to feel into the experience. And how honoring for myself is that?
Yeah.
Right?
I think the other cool thing we're pointing out today is that we get to make the meaning. And so if we're coming from right and wrong, we're going to make mostly a lot of judgment, negative meanings, but we're also looking at behaviors purposeful and has benefit, and we can find the benefits in it, i.e. put a meaning on it that is helpful or supportive. So we can switch our mind, which is predisposed to the negative to try to protect and keep us alive, and go to the more open-hearted side of us that sees the power of say, Jason's going slower is more thorough, is more creative, probably going to create a higher quality product. Excellent. So we get to reframe some of these things that create more understanding and connection with each other.
Well, I'm thinking of Sarah saying to Kirsten, think of all the people who aren't even on that hike or who did 10 kilometers or 15 or whatever, and then they backed out or stopped or whatever. You know, just appreciating you stayed in the game, you stayed in the hike. Wow. How great. I don't know if Michael did it with you, but I'm giving you the kudos. Oh, Michael, okay, you get kudos too, Michael.
Yeah, he did it. Well, he was one of the 2 people who were very far ahead of me.
I see, the longer legs.
Yes.
Now I get it.
Much
Well-
different legs. Length.
Well, Lynn, to the other piece I think you're saying, just to touch on, as I know we're about to close, that we're getting to that place where comparisons have very much ultimatums, all or nothings.
Yes.
They're deleting all this other information because the mind gets so narrow.
Yeah.
So broadening our perspectives is so important.
Well, we're just about at the hour. So again, thank you to each of you for spending this time with us today and diving into this topic and bringing yourselves and your own perspective. It's, you know, I think the 3 of us are always here learning right along with you and deepening our own understanding through your reflections. So thank you. And keep in mind, we're always open to feedback. So if there is a topic you want us to dive into, you know, similar to how we've done today, something that's maybe showing up as a pattern in your life and you'd love us to unpack it, then we would welcome those suggestions. And similarly, maybe there's a topic we've already unpacked and you'd like us to revisit it. That's always an option too. So we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
And we
Thank
have
you so much.
certainty.
Thank
We
you.
have the 3rd C, don't we? We're doing a 3-part, 3 C's. And I think it's certainty is the last one, isn't it?
No, certainty was the first one, certainty, comparison, and
Consistency.
second, I'll look it up. Okay, my mind's
Consistent.
blanking right now.
Consistency.
Consistency, yeah,
Right.
consistency. The illusion of consistency. Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay.
All right, everyone. Wonderful to see you again.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks.
You
Yeah.
too.
Have a
Have
great
wonderful
Bye.
day.
Thanks again.
Bye.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Wow.
Goodbye.